Today's lesson is on adding fractions and mixed numbers with like denominators. And our objective is that you, the students, will be able to add and simplify fractions with like denominators. Now you'll see that the simplification process in this ranges from very, very simple, basic, finding the greatest common factor and dividing, to a little bit more challenging, where you have to first turn an improper fraction into a mixed number, then simplify the fractions, then combine the mixed number with the other whole numbers, and it gets a little bit more challenging. My recommendation: be super organized. I know I've been pushing organization all year long, but now is kind of the time to do that. All right, in order to succeed in this lesson, you're going to need to have to know how to, number one, simplify fractions. That's key. That's from lesson 7-8. And then also convert mixed numbers to improper fractions and improper fractions to mixed numbers. And you have to be good at it, and it has to be quick, and you really have to know how to do that. All right, so our vocabulary today: numerator, denominator, and mixed number. When I say any of those terms, you have to know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're at all unclear about those things, please review them before you continue with this lesson. All right, how do I add fractions with like denominators? That's our first note, and what I'd like you to do is write down all the steps it takes to do that. And then what do I do at the end of every fractions problem? Simplify. I've given you that one already. And again, the simplifying sometimes means just finding the greatest common factor and dividing, and sometimes it's a lot more complicated than that. So this is a lesson to really pay attention to. All right, launching into some examples. Sometimes you add fractions with denominators that are the same, and we have to see fractions as things. And the name of these things are eighths. When they are the same thing, we can just look at the numerators. That tells you how many of those things there are represented in this number. There are 3 of these things called eighths, and we're going to add them to one more of these things called eighths, which is 4/8. Now this is a case where the simplification process is pretty straightforward. We're going to find the greatest common factor of 4 and 8, and then use that greatest common factor to divide the numerator and the denominator, and it'll give us our fraction in the simplest form. All right, so this is the way we've been doing it: finding the prime factorization of 4, finding the prime factorization of 8, and so 4 you have factors of 2 times 2, 8 you have 2 times 2 times 2, and so what do they have in common? They have 1 2 and another 2 in common, and these things being factors are numbers that are multiplied. You need to multiply those 2 numbers together to get a greatest common factor of 4. And after you find that, it's dividing numerator by the greatest common factor, denominator by the greatest common factor, and then that'll yield our fraction in the simplest form. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Box it, and that's your answer. So 3/8 plus 1/8 equals 1/2. Now sometimes you're going to add these things and get an improper fraction. So at the end, we need to turn that improper fraction into a mixed number. 5/6 plus 5/6 means I have sixths, 5 of them, 5 more of them equals 10 of these things called sixths. Now that's an improper fraction that needs to be turned into a mixed number. And the way we do that is we're going to divide, all right? And that division is 10 divided by 6, which is 1, with a remainder of 4. And again, we're dividing up the sixths. I had 10 of them. I used 6 to make the one whole. And how many 6 do I have left over? I have 4 of them, so it's 1 4/6. So that equals 1 4/6. Now that fraction now, not in its simplest form. So we're going to take 4/6 and we're going to find the greatest common factor of 4 and the greatest common factor of 6, or the greatest common factor of 4 and 6, which is looking like 2, but let's just list it out to make sure. 2 times 2 is the factors of 4. The prime factors of 6 are 2 times 3. So what do they have in common? The 2. Those aren't the same, so they're not in common. And then we're going to take the 2 and divide the fraction parts, not the whole number. We're just looking at the fraction now. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. 6 divided by 2 equals 3. Don't forget the whole number. It has to go with the fraction part. So when we simplify the fraction in a mixed number, don't forget to write the whole number, the mixed part of the mixed number. All right, and that is the answer to that. 1 2/3 is 5/6 plus 5/6. All right, moving on now to an example of adding mixed numbers. When you have mixed numbers, you have to see them as a little bit separate things, right? The whole numbers are with the fractions, but we're going to treat them differently. So we're going to add them in different parts or different orders. So we're going to add the whole numbers first. So it's 1 plus 1 equals 2. And remember, write your whole numbers really big. And then the fraction parts, 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3. And that's in its simplest form already, because the numerator and the denominator are both prime numbers. And if you have 2 prime numbers in a fraction, you're in your simplest form. The greatest common factor has to be 1. All right, now sometimes you're going to be adding things and getting an improper fraction here, and that's the only time this is going to get a little bit weird, because you have to remember to combine the whole number in the first part of your mixed number, and then this is going to be another mixed number, and they need to be combined together. In this situation, it isn't, but you'll see in the future. You're going to see. All right, going into our guided practice. All right, guided practice number 1 talks about sevenths here. I have sevenths, I have 1 of them and 4 of them, and then combining them, 1 plus 4 equals 5. And I was combining sevenths, so I have 5 sevenths. 5 is a prime number, 7 is a prime number. 2 prime numbers equals greatest common factor is 1, simplest form. Moving on to number 2, we have 8/15 plus 11/15. And we're going to get a fraction over 1 on this one. So 8 plus 11 equals 19/15. And again, we're adding 15ths, so we have 19 of those things. And here we have an improper fraction, and so it becomes 19 divided by 15, which is 1, with 4/15 left over. That equals 1 and 4/15. Now we're going to be simplifying the fractions. So combining the numerators and simplifying. And sometimes the simplification means you're going to have to turn improper fractions into mixed numbers and then simplify the fraction. So we have 4 as factors of 2 times 2, and then listing them out so they're easy to see. And then 15, you have factors of 3 times 5, both prime numbers. And so what do they have in common? Nothing, except for this little invisible 1 on the end of all of these. Remember, everything has a factor of 1. So if the greatest common factor is 1, that fraction is in its simplest form. So 1 and 4/15. All right, moving on to into some guided practice with mixed numbers. This one looks simple enough, 1 3/4 plus 1 3/4. But you'll soon see that it becomes pretty tricky, because what's going to happen is once we add up these fractions, it's going to be a improper fraction. So we're going to have a mixed number that contains an improper fraction. And at that point, we have to turn the improper fraction into a mixed number and then recombine everything. So let's just starts off very simple, right? Whole numbers together, 1 plus 1 equals 2. And again, add the whole numbers, then the parts. 3 plus 3 equals 6, and we're adding up fourths, so I have 6 fourths. So now you see that we have an improper fraction here, right? And that is kind of combined with this whole number. And in between, even though, let me get a different color now, even though we don't write it in there, there's a little plus sign there, right? And so we're going to have to see that as the whole number plus the fraction part. So when we turn this improper fraction into a mixed number, we're going to have to add that to the original whole number that's part of this improper fraction. Like I said, it becomes somewhat confusing. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out what is the value of 6 over 4 when it's a mixed number, and we're going to find that by taking the 6, dividing it by 4, and what you have is a 1 with 2 fourths left over. All right, so the value of 6 fourths equals 1 and 2 fourths. Now, that is the just the improper fraction part of this. The whole number has to go with it, right? And so the 2 stays. Highlight that 2 again with the right color. So now it's 2 plus, and again, we're going to add that little plus in there, even though we don't see it. It's there. You just have to be aware of it. That this isn't 21 and 2 fourths. It's 2 plus 1 and 2 fourths. So the total answer on this one is 2 plus 1 equals 3, and then the 2 fourths goes with that. Whew! All right, it's a lot of work, right? Well, we're still not finished because this here is it's a non-simplified fraction. Greatest common factor equals 2, so it's going to be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. And don't forget the whole number goes with it. So the final answer here, 3 1/2. All right, this last practice problem is very straightforward. And what we're going to do again is add the whole numbers and then add the fraction parts. So 5 plus 3 equals 8. Now the fraction parts, 5 twelfths plus 3 twelfths means 5 plus 3 is 8 twelfths. Not in its simplest form, and so let's find the greatest common factor. And the way we're going to be doing that is finding the prime factors of 8. So it's 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And then the prime factors for 12 will be 2 times 6 and 2 times 3. So for 12 we have 2 times 2 times 3. And so what do they have in common? They have 1, 2 in common and another factor of 4 in common. Factors multiplied together. Greatest common factor is 2 times 2, which equals 4. And then I'm going to use that to simplify the fraction part. So 8 divided by 4 equals 2. And then 12 divided by 4 equals 3. And don't forget that the whole number needs to continue to stay with the fraction. And so the final answer, 8 2/3. So what are we going to be doing for work? We're going to be finding H8-1 out of your homework book and doing problems 1 through 12, all of them. And remember, always simplify at the end. Good luck.